Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 3 of the Scissortail Podcast, the podcast centered on all things NASL, specifically Rayo OKC and all things going on with footy in the 405. I'm your co-host, Porter Cunningham, joined as always by my good friend Will Bowersox. Will, say hello to the people.
Hello, people. How's it going?
And as always, well, hopefully not as always, but we do have a few clarifications we want to lead with today, some corrections from last week's episode. Real quickly, those are the two notes that none of the Rayo Salt Lake players, I guess the 3 players that were announced last week, all played at Rayo Salt Lake at some point, but none of them overlapped with each other, so they don't have any previous playing experience together. And not only that, but the second point being, we made a comment last week about 2 of the international slots being filled up. That is also not true. As I learned, Will, actually I was listening to our compatriots from up north on the Loyal Company of the River Valley podcast. They discussed in episode 44 that although there are only 7 international players allowed on the roster, if a player has a green card or maybe a work visa, something along those lines, to play or earn a living in the United States, that does not count for the 7 players. So something to make note of. Sebastian Velasquez does not count as an international slot. So that being said, let's jump right into what we know about the team this week. 2 new signings. Will, you got some information for us on those?
Two additional signings to the club, both been met with what we could call pretty good acclaim from the community of the NASL podcasters and commenters. So the first was a defensive midfielder signing, a guy named Michel. He is Brazilian. He's got one name, so he probably is pretty good, right? He's got one name, just like one name. Last played at FC Dallas, which is interesting. That club just signed a development contract with the Energy, so guess he wanted to play for the other team in town, but he's known for being an exceptional set-piece taker. He's left-footed, and that's his reputation that he comes to town with. So looking forward to seeing him taking the set pieces. I assume he'll be the primary taker. The second signing, and hopefully I say this correctly, Keisuke Kimura. He's a defensive player who hails from Japan. Fairly experienced player, both in the NASL, most recently playing with the Silverbacks, and before that bounced around a couple of different MLS franchises. So Colorado, played for the Timbers in Portland, and also spent some time with the Red Bulls. This is interesting, right? This is what the third Silverback signing that we've made. So curious to see how many more are coming down the pipeline. And it looks like this is the last week of January. There will be more signings announced at the end of this week. So Porter, there's been some rumors floating out there about our future signings you want to discuss?
Yes, definitely. And we know the team has already said there'll be more signings coming this week. And you and I think, have seen rumors out there. We heard possibly an unnamed former Mexican international player, which will, if true, obviously help the Hispanic growth that they're trying to have in the community. And also, we've seen Derek Boateng, the Ghanaian international, who
brother of Kevin Prince and Jerome.
I'm not sure there's any relation there. I think Boateng is a fairly common last name in Ghana, but he does have European experience. Apparently, he was close to signing with Rayo Vallecano in 2014, but that deal fell through. So I think his agent has been reporting to some European papers that he signed with Rayo OKC. So not announced by the club yet, but we'll see if that comes to fruition or not.
I look forward to hearing about it. So that's just, quick segment 1, 2 new signings this week, a couple rumors out there. Hopefully we'll have more to discuss next week with regards to signings. But we are going to come back after this break. We are sitting down and interviewing with Brad Orchard from the yet-to-be-named supporters group for the club. So hang with us through the break. We'll be right back.
All right, welcome back to episode 3 now we're on already of the Scissortail Podcast. I am your co-host, Porter Cunningham, joined as always by my good friend, Will Bowerstocks. William, say hello.
Greetings. Hello.
And we also have a great guest with us today, our first guest ever on the Scissortail podcast, a fine gentleman by the name of Brad Orchard. Brad is here to talk with us today about the Rayo OKC supporters group. So that being said, we want to dive right in and ask Brad as many questions as we can. So Brad, to start off with, just tell me a little bit about yourself and why you're a soccer supporter in the first place.
Well, first of all, thanks, guys. I had no idea I was the very first guest, so wow, no pressure at all in that one. I am, tell a little bit about myself. Oklahoma native. I have been here all my life. I grew up in a little bitty tiny town in southeastern Oklahoma, and I look a little older than I think I'm a little older than I look, so people can't believe I grew up like in the 70s, and I'd never played soccer. There was no soccer in my town. My first experience with soccer was seeing Pele on Wide World of Sports. And then I think in 1978, Tulsa got a team in the old North American Soccer League, the Roughnecks. I just became a huge fan. And we all know, if you follow soccer at all, you know the sad story of the old NASL and how we were soccer wasteland for years until the World Cup in '94, which I was blessed enough to go to a couple of games down in Dallas as the World Cup, and then just became a fan of MLS when it started, and, well, always wished that we had a team to support, and now here we are.
Very nice. And I think that kind of is a great segue to the next question. So you've always wanted Oklahoma City to have a team. Well, 2 years ago we got one. So I guess the question for you is why this team? Why Rayo OKC? And why not, I guess, throw your lot in with the other team that's in town?
That's a great question. And for a little bit of a correction, we actually got a team 3 years ago when I noticed a little thing saying that there was going to be a PDL team that played at OCU, and they were called Oklahoma City FC, OKCFC, which, if you really want to be technical, is exactly what Rayo OKC is. Rayo OKC is basically OKCFC 2.0 because it's two-thirds
That's correct.
two-thirds of the same ownership group. That is the team I decided to support because that was the only team there was. There was no Energy until, well, anyway, there was no Oklahoma City Energy at that time. We were the only game in town, and and then as soon as they announced they were going to be going towards the NASL, that's when I started hearing about this other team, the unnamed team going in the USL. And that's probably a story for another podcast about all the shenanigans that went on behind the scenes that kept OKCFC from playing. Last year was going to be their first year, and it was going to be actually being played in Taft Stadium. That didn't happen. But I've still followed the guys who wanted to start the team. Sean Jones, one of the owners, Debray Ayala, great guys. And Porter, you were at the press conference where they announced the coach. You got to meet the ownership group and like Eric Neuendorf and Ramon from the team, all just great guys. And I want to support them as much as the team because I want them to succeed. I want this whole thing to succeed. So I hope that's good enough answer. Any questions?
Sure. Yeah. And we definitely want to have some, if not all of those guys on from, to the run up to the season and
right.
Also throughout the season. So I'm sure there would be plenty of time to fill in the backstories there for all these people that are kind of asking who is Rayo OKC and where did this team come from? So there is a big story there, certainly to talk about in the future. But back to the supporters group that you're chairing up here. What do we have a name yet, or do you have some potential names? Is there going to be a vote?
That is something I'm hoping. I just sent an email out this morning, as a matter of fact, to ask people about when we want to have our next meeting, because I think it's time that we need to have an official name for the group. Some of the ideas we came up that have been bannered about so far are things like Thor's crew, having to do with lightning and thunder, I guess. The Red Army, I like that one. That's a good one. My best idea so far is the Western Front, and that kind of goes along with Timbers Army, and then I think Minnesota United, their group is called the Northern Guard. So, yeah, we're absolutely open. If someone just has that killer name, it's going to go, yeah. but it is going to go up for a vote, whoever's at the meeting. So hopefully by next week, we will have an actual official name for the group.
So I have to ask really quickly. I know you and I discussed it in person at the head coaching announcement, but there was actually a few questions on the team or the NASL subreddit. I don't remember if we will be bringing back the Red Dirt Brigade, which was one of the original SG names, and I know there's some story there.
Yeah.
But that question was asked, and I thought I'd give you a chance to speak on that as well.
Well, you know what? When I thought about doing this, and also just for clarification, no one has anointed me and Peter Holden to be like, oh, this is our group. We just saw a need, and I want to start a supporters group. If someone comes along, hey, Porter or Will or someone comes along and says, hey, you guys are doing this wrong, I know how to do this, great. I'm going to turn it over to you because we have honestly no idea what we're doing. But the first thought I had was Red Dirt Brigade, because that was the OG name for the first supporters group of Oklahoma City FC. It just happened organically. These guys started showing up, and I would sit in the group with them, and before you knew it, the group was called the Red Dirt Brigade, which I thought was an outstanding name. I kind of floated that out there in a soccer forum and kind of got a negative response from one of the guys who started that group, who is now part of the grid with the energy. So not wanting to start a turf war or steal anyone else's name. I didn't think it was stealing, but he kind of mentioned that he didn't think it would be he didn't want us to use that name. Fair enough. Not going to.
So you should definitely use it, is what you're
saying. Okay. Yeah, that's not what I said, but hey, you know what? We'll put it up for a vote.
I'm not sure if you've noticed, but a turf war is exactly what we're about to be involved in. So might as well take the initiative, right?
Yes. I guess you're right. That would be an incredible shot across the bow to some people. We'll talk about that. I'm not going to just throw it out of hat. We'll see. Let's just leave it at that. We'll see.
All right. Good point.
Fair enough. Brad, I'm curious. So it sounds like you've been working behind the scenes now since day one, for the last 2.5 years. What kind of contact have you had with the club? What kind of people are at the helm of this club? Do you know?
You know what? I've got to say that everyone that I have met has just been good people. And that goes to all the way to the top. The minority owner of the team, Sean Jones. When all the shenanigans started 2.5 years ago, before there'd been a ball kicked, and all of the things happened with one of their other ownership group, I had been just jumped on to bigsoccer.com. For those of you who don't know anything about soccer forums, I'd probably say bigsoccer.com is like the biggest soccer forum for all leagues, all countries in the world. I'd gotten on there and I'd started talking up OKCFC and had been a real rah-rah, real cheerleader for them. And then all this stuff happened. And so Sean just reached out to me out of the blue. I had no idea who he was. And just said, I'd like to meet with you, to talk to you, kind of give you behind the scenes what's been going on. And this was before we really knew anything. And I took that as, I was impressed by that this man he didn't owe me anything. But 2.5 years ago, Sean Jones just reached out and met me at McNally's one day. He and Debray Ayala, just to tell me what's been going on behind the scenes. And it has gone up and down since then. You can ask him. He even said to me at one point, they could write a book about what's happened here, just in the whole soap opera that happened behind the scenes between the Energy and OKCFC. But I've met Sean through that, and I've also met, like I said, Debray Ayala, the new general manager, Eric Neuendorf. I knew Eric when he used to work for the Oklahoma City Blazers. That's how I met him. Brad Lund, he's the one guy I probably haven't met. But we met Ramon Renteria, who is the director of Hispanic Business Development. I met him at the press conference. Just a super great guy. You send him an email, he'll respond to you within a couple of minutes. So these are guys that just seem very passionate, nice guys, very approachable. And as a matter of fact, Eric and Ramon both have said whenever we're going to have a supporters group meeting to let them know, and they could probably get the coach to come out and meet the supporters group. That's pretty cool. And like I said, I'm nobody. I'm just one of the guys trying to, just want to watch some soccer. But they have just been very approachable, very nice, very helpful. The first supporters group meeting we had, Sean Jones organized it. He said, hey, why don't you guys, we can meet at Coop, he said. But he made it clear. He said, I don't want to make it look like we're making a supporters group. He goes, I know the guy at Coop. We can have it there. He goes, I'll bring the pizza. He said, if you want to introduce me, that's great. Then I'll leave. And that's what he did. He brought the pizza. We had free beer. He announced himself and said, all right, you guys have fun. I'm out of here. I really enjoyed meeting every single one of them.
Awesome. That's really good to hear. And I think that's something that Will and I really hope for, is that the club obviously knows that a supporters group is integral to the success of the club, but to not let the supporters group be a mouthpiece for the club, just like we're trying not to be a mouthpiece for the club. It needs to be an independent, but still vital part of the team. So let's talk a little bit more specifically here. Now that we know the history, thinking about the future, do you guys have any good chants put together that you can share with us today?
None that we can share, probably on a family program. The one thing, no, seriously, the one thing I know that Peter and I have talked about, and this is, we're so early into this. We don't have a list yet of official supporters group. We don't have a name for the group yet. So, cart before the horse kind of thing. But the one thing we both said, and it's going to be tough, is that if at all possible, whatever chants, whatever songs we have, we'd like for them to be as original as possible and not try to copy any other group. And I think, Porter, it may have been you who said this, and I completely agree. We need to write this as one of the 10 commandments of the supporters group. We will never sing a song which says, oh, when the whatever comes marching in.
Thank you. Yes, that was me.
Like another group in town seems to want to do. So, yeah.
I think you and I agree there's only one, maybe two clubs in the entire world that have my permission to sing that chant, and they're not on this continent. So
that is correct.
If that's your ground rule, I think you guys are already off to a good start.
Yeah, but that sounds like a great. It sounds like a great rule in general. Hey, we're going to be original. Now 1, 2, 3, go, start a chant. The
key is find a bunch of obscure chants from South American teams.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
Don't just pull one off of whatever you hear on NBC Sports, right?
And translate them into English, absolutely, or not. So we could learn them in Spanish and no one would know what we're talking about. We would know.
So in a similar vein, do you have any ideas or thoughts for putting together any tifos this season? And maybe even backing up before that, can you maybe elaborate on what exactly a tifo is and what role does that play in the life of a supporters group?
Well, for people who don't know what a tifo is, have you ever watched this is going to show my bias. If you ever watch a Portland Timbers game, at the beginning of almost every home game, there's this gigantic display that's put up in the end zone where Timbers Army sits. For some reason, it stands for something that's called a tifo. I believe it's Spanish. It's a concatenated word meaning banner somehow in Spanish or Italian. Anyway, a ginormous display, colorful, sometimes against the team you're playing, sometimes just for your home team. So absolutely, we've talked about that, and that's something we'll talk about as we get rolling. And I think I let you guys know, there are only two things you need to do incredible displays like that, and that's time and lots of money. Because when you start seeing how much fabric it takes to put together those ginormous tifos, it can get expensive. So we're going to have some bake sales and some car washes. And Peter and I talked about this. Maybe dues. We don't know. We don't want to get there yet. But somehow we're going to have to come up with some cash to support our tifo habit if we're going to have one. So that's just the reality of it.
Definitely something we can make happen, though, for sure.
Absolutely. I saw, as a matter of fact, I sent you guys a link in those questions you sent me. There's a link to a story about the Timbers Army. And at the very first of it, they show this kind of like a little storefront. And you realize what it is. It's a warehouse where the Timbers Army keeps all of their material to make their tifos and their displays and their banners and their flags. So now you got to think, holy cow. Now someone somehow has the money to pay for a storefront to keep all of the things that they've already purchased with that. Somehow they've got the money. So you can see how we might have to see if the team might be able to help us with some of this, give us a space, and I don't know. We'll figure it out. Like I said, it's a fluid situation right now. So.
Well, what about road games, away games? Do you have anything planned in terms of travel?
I did until San Antonio decided not to be in the league this year, so that kind of put the kibosh on that because the closest away game I believe we have now would be Indianapolis, Indiana. It just makes it tougher, and hopefully that won't be the case. Maybe we're hoping in the near future Nasal's going to grow. I know they're looking at some West Coast expansion. I'm just hoping, some other larger city in the Midwest and the Southwest, think of Albuquerque, Austin, someone. We're going to add those as a team here in the near future, and we'll have an actual game that we can actually drive to. So what do you guys think about that? When I thought about away games, like I said, the one that came to mind was going to be San Antonio.
Yeah, we'll obviously have some local chances with Open Cup play.
Absolutely.
So that'll be an opportunity, and then. Besides that, I read an article mentioning that, if the NASL wants to grow to the West Coast, that's great, but eventually they need to return to Texas. So hopefully in the next year or two, there'll be some Texas teams. But you're right. I mean, it's pretty much nowhere that we can drive to. Almost everywhere we'll play away needs to be a flight, and that's always tough to schedule.
No, I was going to say, let's before we go on something else, let's think about it, because that's, to me, if you guys are, we're here after the season, the one thing I'm really excited about is the possibility to play that other team in town in the U.S. Open Cup. And that's going to be great if that comes about, if they can keep up their end of the bargain, and then we get drawn against them, which I would assume we're going to if they win a couple of games beforehand. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I'd like to see how the roster gets built out, but based on what we've seen so far, I think there's a great chance that we see some intercity derbies or rivalry games, certainly some interstate ones, depending on how the draw for the Cup goes down.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, but for us to play the Energy, no matter what, I believe they would have to beat Tulsa in the previous round.
Yeah, the way it's drawn, the amateur teams come in first, and then the NPSL and the PDL comes in, and then the USL comes in. And then maybe there's one more game, like last year, Tulsa and Oklahoma City played each other. And then the NASL, the next level, we would be in that next level, from what I understand. And so if they can win, then we would be waiting for them. And I know that they like to regionalize the Cup games. There's a very good chance we would get drawn against them or Tulsa if one of those two teams can win their part of the bracket. That's the way I see it.
I just think it'd be great. I think it'd be great for the city.
Oh, it'd be amazing. I think so too. Absolutely.
The guys at the U.S. Open Cup have really got to be hoping for that too.
As we get ready to launch the season and the supporters group starts to gain some momentum, are there any events or promotions or meetings that we should know about or that people are welcome to join?
Absolutely. And I've told you, I think I mentioned this earlier, I just sent out an email to the people on my list, which, by the way, is if anyone wants to join the supporters group, absolutely, man. We want everyone. Send me an email. Right now, you send me or Peter Holden an email, and mine's the easiest one to remember. I guess my name is Brad Orchard, and my email is brad.orchard@gmail. So we're working on getting a supporters group, like a group email account, a Twitter account, maybe even a Facebook page. But hey, we're new to this. Neither one of us have ever done this before. But right now, if the best way to find out, I have a group email. An email group started in my Gmail so that I just send one blast out to everyone. It keeps growing, which is great. We're going to have another group meeting probably next week, because that's the responses I've been getting is that next week works better for people. So please contact me by email. I'll get you on the list. You'll be in there with the rest of us. So
if you're listening, when Brad says next week, he's talking about the week of Monday, February 1st. So if you happen to be local listening to this podcast, you want to come out to a meeting and see what it's all about, make sure and email Brad. He'll get on the list and get you on the list, and then you could come out the week of February 1st. And Brad, I want to say quickly, you mentioned earlier, you guys are just kind of doing this because there was a vacuum out there. That's kind of how Will and I got started on the podcast. And I know I'm speaking for Will and I both when I say we would much rather let people talk about the quote-unquote non-existent Rayo OK supporters group and it start organically than the club will put something out there that is propped up by the club and kind of say we've got all of our shit together. I would much rather everybody be able to say, are there any fans? Where are all the fans? And in the background, we're organically growing something that's important rather than just let the club use all their time and money to get something set up. So definitely appreciate what you guys are doing too.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. And hey, I appreciate what you guys are doing. And any way I can help you, please let me know, and vice versa. Because I think our goal is the same. We want to see. I think we want to see soccer grow in Oklahoma City. I want to see specifically. I want to see Rayo OKC grow. I just had some the other night. I went to a small group, and the guy who once again, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. He was like, "What do you mean the other team?" I said, "The other team. I'm supporting, Rayo." Really? And the more I told him about it, he gets excited. And I know this may be mean. I don't care. But he said, well, what do you think is going to happen to the energy? And I was like, I don't really care what happens to the energy. That's not my concern. I want our team to grow. I want to fill that place up every game. I want us to have to move somewhere bigger. That's, I want it to be relevant. That's my goal. If you ask me, what would you like to see happen in the next year or two? I would like for Rayo OKC to be the most relevant sports team. We have that big blue team that plays at Chesapeake. Other than them, I would like to see Rayo be the most important sports team in the Oklahoma City metro area.
Will, I think maybe you had one last question for Brad.
Yeah, I'm curious. You watch a lot of European soccer, or even down south, and you realize the history that some of these clubs have, and by default or by association, the history that the supporters group has as well, kind of dovetailing with that of the club. People talk about a team representing a city, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of that is driven by the supporters groups themselves, and of course you'll see some clubs have multiple supporters groups that sometimes don't get along, and so I'm just curious. This is kind of a pretentious thing to say, right? But if you think about a representative culture that you're hoping the supporters group will stand for, if you had to pick how it would turn out, be crafted, or what it would look like, what do you think that is?
Okay, and that's where I think I'm kind of glad Peter's on the podcast today, because see, Peter is an unrepentant Seattle Sounders fan, and I've been a big Portland Timbers fan. So I would say, I even talked to him about it this morning. I would like to see I would love to wake up like in 2 years and just see that our supporters group, our culture is anywhere close to what I see like in Portland and the Timbers Army. I mean, you got people sleeping in tents outside the stadium just to get a good seat the night before a game. You got, them reaching out to their community. I sent that link to you guys about how they helped a kid with cancer. That didn't, hit you emotionally. You're just dead inside. But and he said the same thing about Seattle, and then we both agreed that honestly, really they're basically the same thing. It's just relevance in your community. But at some point, if the supporters group is going to make a difference in the city, make people see the team, it's got to reach out. We're going to have to get to where we're reaching out. We're doing things other than soccer games. That's my thought.
Yeah,
is that it has to reach into, in quote, real life. But it's got to be something that the people want to be a part of. And I go back to two or three of the guys that are running the team are guys that used to run one of my other favorite teams, which was the Oklahoma City Blazers hockey team. And I think about that. That went for 17 years. You used to see the same people at the games every game. I didn't know their names. There was like Puckhead. There was the people that had the siren light, had the police light when a goal went off. There was that guy.
Right.
They had a booster club. They had people who followed the players and went to the away games. You don't just the team didn't do that. That was, like you said, that's organic growth. That just happened because people cared, and that's the goal. You got to get people to care more than just this is something to do on a Saturday night. Hopefully, we have something to do with that. I don't want to be pretentious either, but I would hope we do. So
yeah, definitely. That's a great answer, and I think we're all looking forward to seeing how the club does in the coming months and years, as well as the supporters group. So, Brad, thank you for your time. Appreciate you coming on and answering questions, and we'll look forward to staying in touch and probably seeing you in the stands.
Guys, thank you very much, and good luck with the podcast too.
Thank you very much. So we will wrap things up. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be back with our free talk segment. Thanks again for listening.
Welcome back to the Scissortail Podcast, Episode 3. Want to send a big thank you out to Brad Orchard for that last segment, for coming on with us, talking about the Rayo OKC supporters group that he and Peter Holden are putting together. Want to remind everybody out there, if that's something you might be interested in, make sure and send Brad an email. Once again, his email address is brad.orchard@gmail.com. Send him an email, let him know you're interested in the list, and you'll be up to date of all of the supporters group happenings. Now we're into our free talk segment for the week. Will, I just wanted to kind of update everybody on what we know about the club. We're getting really focused on player signings and all that, but there's still a few things we don't know besides players. My personal favorite that I'm waiting on are kits. What are the jerseys going to look like? And are we going to get that great rainbow kit that Rayo Vallecano wears? That kit they released last year, and they announced that €7 from each jersey sold go to 7 different causes represented by the rainbow on the kit. And beyond that, I think it's just a really cool looking jersey. So what do you think about that? Do you have any opinions on the jerseys?
I would love for the jersey to have some sort of tie into the community. A lot of people have not loved the fact that thus far, both in name and in badge, we're apparently hewing too close to the Rayo Vallecano brand. And I would love to see some tie-in to local charitable causes in Oklahoma City. I don't know how much I would like to see it be identical. I certainly hope that the jersey is unique but traditional. I'm not looking to something kind of out of the Oregon Ducks football program, but hopefully it looks good. Yeah, I don't really have any bold opinions, but that's what I think.
It's a really good point. What about manufacturer? Do you have a preferred brand, I guess? I think Rayo Vallecano is carried by Kelmy, I believe. Who do you like to see there?
Yeah, I have silly opinions. I follow uniform design, jersey design more closely. There's a couple of good blogs out there that I read. In the world of professional soccer, I definitely prefer the work that Umbro and Kappa and even Nike do, as opposed to a company like Adidas or Puma that have really obvious design templates that they work off of. I would prefer, the rumor out there right now is that Nike will be partnering with us. And I guess I really don't care too much as long as it is A, not Adidas, and B, is relatively good looking.
I'm a big fan of the non-brand name stuff. So obviously I love everything Nike does. They've got the big budget. They're going to make a splash in terms of design, but I'm not too particular. I agree. Not a huge Puma fan in terms of their jersey design. Love their shoes. Not crazy about their jerseys, but I think no matter what, we'll have something cool. And I definitely agree with your opinion about making it community centric, tying it into Oklahoma City. Although it would be cool to have the rainbow jersey, definitely a chance there to really tie it into the community.
Porter, one exciting piece of news we got over the weekend was that the team store is finally up. So no jersey yet, but you can log on to the team store from the Rayo OKC website. They've got some T-shirts for sale as well as decals, etc. I'm sure they'll be adding more to it over time. But if you have some money that's burning a hole in your pocket that you want to buy Rayo gear with, you now have an avenue to do so. Porter, any general reactions on your end to the direction the club is heading in, both with an on the field and off the field product?
I sent a tweet out from our Scissortail Podcast Twitter account earlier. I made kind of a joke that everybody is laughing at this organization because they've been slow out of the gate in terms of marketing and getting information out there. And they're really doing the opposite of that, I feel like, when it comes to the signings they've announced so far. Obviously, they're spending a lot more time and money on the on-field product than the off-field. And I, for one, think that's an interesting strategy. I think they're going to go for, let's put a really good product on the field and win some games and get a lot of excitement about the team, and then the followers will come, rather than let's get a lot of people jacked up for a product that we're not really sure the kind of impact is going to have. So that's just my personal opinion on the situation. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I like that. Well, I would say I would prefer that they move slow and be thorough and be intentional rather than move fast and make mistakes at the expense of projecting a swift moving entity. I like that at least in terms of the on-field product, it looks like they're trying to find players that have experience in the NASL or at the MLS level. Even if they haven't played together, they've played ideally in the same system across multiple clubs. I like that the defensive backbone of the team is relatively experienced in terms of how much time they've played professionally. I think anytime you're starting a new team or you've got a new coach, you've got new players and a new coach, having a solid defensive foundation is a really good platform for a team and hopefully provides them a measure of breathing room if they need some games to gel on the offensive side of what they're hoping to do in the system.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And we're speaking about a team as a whole, and we say veteran players, and it's only 5 players signed of what a 24-man roster, I think, is what they end up filling out. So still plenty of room for young players, plenty of room for fresh faces, and room for even the rumor of bringing over some Rayo Vallecano players or young players that haven't seen a whole lot of time on the pitch over there. So I think they'll have that opportunity, but they've definitely, like you said, got a good group of experienced defenders to start the team.
Yeah, I think that last thing you were speaking about will be interesting. The number of, if any at all, Rayo Vallecano players will be coming over. How long will they be over for? How many of them will there be? Will there be a ton of pressure that they must get playing time? You know, if you're sending one player over for 3 games, that might disrupt the team at large if they're trying to gain some consistency. If you're sending over something like 7 or 8 players for, you know, the entire spring or fall season or the entire season, that's obviously something much different that could be a better platform. So we'll be curious to see how much turnover there is from the Rayo, the Madrid-based club. Anyway, so that's all we've got in the Free Talk segment. Thank you for listening in. If you're still listening at this point, we'll be back to discuss future happenings of the club next week. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.